Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Classic, Physique Pro, and Olympian. Today's guest is Wesley Vissers. Wesley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
For sure. So, Wesley, the first question I'd like to ask you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Well, the number one has to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. People who know me a little bit know that I'm a really big fan of him. His dominant classic physique of back in the day, it still strikes to me as one of the most, beautiful physiques up until this day, even. That's just one of my favorite physiques of all time for sure. I also really like Serge Nubret, also from that era. Very different physique, but he manages to present his physique in a very different way, even all the way up until now, really. Just a really different aesthetic physique. And also Lee Haney, I believe the last classic Mr. Olympia, of course, before Dorian Yates. And Lee Haney really had a great way of presenting his physique on stage. His posing routines were quick, dynamic, but also very classic, very in control of his poses. So those kind of bodybuilders, that's what I really like in terms of their physical presence and the combination of not being overly conditioned, but still be conditioned enough to show every single muscle on stage and being in great proportion and being able to, showcase those classic poses on stage, which I'm a big fan of.
Excellent. Love it, man. Okay. So, at what age, Wesley, did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
So I started when I was 14 years old, and the simple reason was I was not allowed to train with weights before age 14 in the gym I was going to back then. So at first I only did some cardio, like literally on the bike or the treadmill a few years before that, just to be active a little bit. But afterwards, when I turned 14, then I was able to being allowed to train with the weights as well. So starting with the machines first and then going to free weights. But the reason why I started training at that age was because my dad had always trained. He had been a bodybuilder, never competing on stage, but he did train exactly like a bodybuilder would. So he was, in my eyes, a very big, muscular man, and I wanted to be like him from a very early age. So when I was allowed to train to become like him, I took my chance and I went straight to the gym.
Excellent, man. Love that. Okay. So, I kind of want to transition into your childhood and your upbringing a little bit now, Wesley. So, if you don't mind, talk about where you grew up, paint that picture for us in regards to what your childhood was like, what activities were you involved with, just work your way up to like your teenage years. And then I've got some questions to kind of transition us from there.
So I grew up in a true farmer's village here in the Netherlands. So literally no bodybuilding inspiration can be drawn from that village because nobody was really doing the sport. So, I was back before I was a bodybuilder or did even any training at all. I actually did gymnastics. That's the first sport that I did, I think from like age 10 or so to maybe 13 or maybe age 9 to 13 up until the moment we were going to do like national competitions. And the funny thing is, the moment I had to do competitions, that's when I stopped gymnastics because I didn't want to do it for the competitions. I simply wanted to do it for the sport. So that's funny because obviously now I am doing a lot of contests, so it kind of turned around. But gymnastics really did bring foundation to my love for working with my body, like being physically active, basically. And I was also a gamer. So a lot of people don't know this or don't expect this of me, but I was a very, fanatic gamer. So I had everything like the PlayStation, Xbox on the PC. I did everything there. And I did that for many years. And I only slowed down my gaming because I realized that it took away from my bodybuilding progress, especially because pulling all-nighters isn't really productive to gain muscle. So I think around 17 or 18, I really slowed down on my gaming, and I even became like you call them a game master or an administrator on gaming forums. So I really got up in the ranking there. I was really serious about it, but it took a lot of hours out of my day. And I didn't know what I wanted to do back then. So obviously I was resistance training, and I did make some progress, but I never even thought I could be a bodybuilder because I thought you had to be like Ronnie Coleman to be successful. So I was just doing it for fun. And I wasn't interested in competitions because I remembered from gymnastics, that's not the reason. I lost my interest in it when I had to compete against others. I really was a introvert, more of an individual person, not really a team person per se. And because I didn't know what to do, I did a few studies or educations first, like some weird things like chemical technology first. But after like 6 months, I was like, okay, this is not for me. Then I went to communication and multimedia design, which actually did help me up until this day with how to, bring up a social media, for example. Did that for 3 years, but then I ended that as well because the moment I had to do internships, I realized this is what I have to do later on as well. So they gave me a taste of what it was like to work as a communication or multimedia expert. And I didn't like the line of work that they presented. So I was like, okay, I can either do this and not be happy with my future job, or now find something I'm truly interested in. And right around that time, I was 20, 21 years old. And that's when I actually won my first bodybuilding contest. And then I fell in love with how nutrition can affect your body. And there was only one true education here in the Netherlands, one university study that offered like the combination of athletics and nutrition, and that's called nutrition and dietetics. And that's what I did, and that's what I actually completed. And now I'm officially a sports dietitian. But that came the closest to my interests, and really has helped me, become a more, scientifically based bodybuilder rather than having to figure everything out from other people. I could actually look up stuff myself, do the research myself, and that education really helped me through all of that. So, once I got through that education, during those years, I became a pro, and then eventually went to the Mr. Olympia, and that's really when my motivation to become the best in the world basically, started. So that's really a short version of what happened.
Excellent, man. Now I'm gonna take a couple steps back because I want to touch on a few things from what you shared about your childhood. So first of all, growing up in the Netherlands, what I'm assuming football or soccer is like very popular over there. What are some other athletic endeavors that are really big in the Netherlands outside of what we call in the States soccer?
Yeah, soccer is definitely the biggest thing. But if you look at the Olympics, everything that we are great at is usually also winter sports or swimming sports. So swimming is pretty big here. Also ice skating is very big here because we have some big names here in the Netherlands. And usually those big athletes that win the gold medal, they inspire an entire generation here to actually do that same sport. And you also have something famous here called the Elfstedentocht, which means the 11 city trip. Because when it's really cold here, a very big river freezes, and then you can actually ice skate through 11 cities. And that's been a very popular thing culturally here in the Netherlands. So it's like ice skating has been in the Dutch culture for decades, really a long time. So that's a popular sport. But I've never really been into that myself because most of those things, like soccer especially, or other team sports, they require other people to be good at it. And I really try to search for something individualistic that I and only me was responsible for the progress. So that's the reason why I never really was drawn to sports like that.
Okay, now you said you grew up on a farm. So did you guys have so I'm here in the States and I'm in the state of Iowa. So farming and agriculture is very big in where I'm at. But so growing up on a farm, was it like an agriculture farm? Did you guys grow crops? Did you have livestock and things like that? What type of a farm did you grow up on, and what was that experience like specifically for you, Wesley?
Well, I didn't actually grow up at the farm myself, but I did grow up in a farmer's village. So it's basically like, the village itself, it's like a very small town with a lot of the typical Dutch farmer areas, like a lot of, usually lots of cheese and milk is being produced there. And I grew up with that around me. Um, uh, because we went as a child, my parents always took me to like the farms themselves, or like they call it like a children's farm, which means they show everything, all the farm animals in like one place, like the goats, the sheep, the horses, the donkeys, and the cows and cattle, everything in basically one place to learn about how that goes, even rabbits and stuff. So I learned a lot about how nature works and how the nature provides all of the high quality nutrition. And it was really, I've always been interested in nature myself, and I always have loved animals myself as well. So I think growing up in an area like that really instilled in me the appreciation of basically the natural world, and how farming really provides such a big thing, positive thing in people's lives.
Hmm, very cool, man. Now, what were some of your go-to games when you were deep into the gaming world? I'm sure some of the listeners and viewers would love to hear that.
So, well, there were several stages of my gaming life. So, at first, when I was way smaller, when we had like the PlayStation 1, me and my brother used to play a lot of Crash Bandicoot. I think a lot of people know that for sure, like Crash Team Racing, Crash Bash, and Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, 3. Played all of those several times. And we even like, if you got a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, you can like, in the Netherlands we call it, you can burn the chip. Like, you can place a chip inside the PlayStation that allows you to download the games yourself and basically pirate all of those games from all kinds of places. And back then it was pretty rare to do, because you didn't really have an internet community posting all of those games online yet. So you had to go to like like a dealer who dealed in those games. So I had all of the possible games you can imagine, like one disc at like 50 of those games, and I played them all. I really loved the racing games as well, like Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, and Midnight Club, Need for Speed. I was a really big fan of racing games, really love cars as well because of that. And even like, a lot of people think gaming is like useless, but small things like, I played Gran Turismo 4 and 5 for like years, and even until this day, I can still recognize like 90% of us driving on the road because of those games. And people are always impressed. How do you know what car that is? You're never talking about cars or do anything regarding cars, but it's because of my gaming history that I've actually taught myself English as well, know how to read and speak English, and recognize a lot of different things like the cars. And always used to be a fan of fighting games as well, like Tekken. Mostly, I have all the Tekkens, like from 1 until 7. I've played them all already, and a lot of from the moment that the gaming went from doing it with your brother to online gaming, that's when the competitiveness really started, of course, because then you can compete with people online. And I did that a lot with all the fighting games, and really got intensely frustrated as well for at some people when I couldn't win. So I was really passionate about gaming, and I was really pretty good at every single game that I played that much. And I had a few friends in high school who were also gamers. We used to do that with headsets, like playing Battlefield, and never did Call of Duty, even though that's like one of the biggest like Twitch and streaming game there is right now in terms of the shooters. But I was more of a Battlefield type of guy. And but after that, like when the PlayStation 4 came out, we have a PlayStation 5, but I maybe touch it like 3 times in my life, and that's it. So I really did most of my playing on the PlayStation 3, a little on PlayStation 4, and after that, pretty much nothing. Maybe something on the
Awesome, man.
desktop.
All
Played
right.
some Skyrim. Really love the yeah. Actually, yeah. You have also I had also a gaming period phase of doing MMO RPGs, like the massive multiplayer role playing online games like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, you know, a lot of those games, and usually private servers as well, where you level up quicker, get cooler gear and stuff like that. So when I went to play a game, I really went hard in it. So I really knew everything about the game itself. And sometimes I do miss it, but it just, you either specialize in that or you specialize in something like what I'm doing right now. And of course, also with a family. So the time is simply too much of an issue that I haven't really touched gaming for years, basically.
Mm. Awesome, man. Okay, now one kind of last question I want to touch on in terms of your upbringing, and then we're going to start transitioning into college and bodybuilding and all that. But growing up, kind of like where you grew up in that kind of farmer's village, is it fair to say that most of the people that when they kind of get into after high school and into adulthood, do most of the people kind of stay in that general area? Are there few people that ever like leave that area? Talk about that, and what does it mean for you to be able to be kind of the celebrity that you are now, coming from where you came from? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because most people I went to high school with, when I haven't looked any of them up for a while, but when I did, when I was interested in what they were doing, they all pretty much stayed around that area. So that is true. And some people did actually do other things, but like someone actually became a professional poker player in Las Vegas. But that's something like comparable to me. Like he was already doing poker back then, and he simply it has little to do with your education, but more with your own interest and passion, and becoming better in that, and then really separating yourself from the rest. So when you find your passion early in life, you can really get very far pretty quickly. And the one funny thing is the gym I trained at the farmer's village, I talked to the owner back then even, and he also has a daughter, and she now also is a professional bodybuilder, like figure athlete. So it was very funny to see that we both train in like a gym in a farmer's village and eventually make it to the Olympia, like from nowhere, basically. So that's pretty cool to hear, because usually it's like guys from the bigger, more known cities that really make a name for themselves here in terms of bodybuilding in the Netherlands, but rarely do they come from like a village where bodybuilding is like non-existent, basically. And to still produce several Olympia-worthy athletes is pretty cool to witness and to experience.
Very cool. Absolutely, man. Okay, so you kind of talked and touched on a little bit your education. I want you to just expound a little bit, or give us your thoughts on how important is it to you, Wesley, to have that education in nutrition. Because a lot of what we gather through bodybuilding and education is like what they call bro science, right? But you're school educated, you have this education, you have this degree in nutrition. Is that something that you really take a lot of pride in? And how important is it to you to have that science-based nutrition degree?
So I think it's very important, because I'm not just an athlete, a bodybuilding athlete, but also a coach. So I used to coach a lot more, especially during the time where I just finished my degree, when I got my actual degree, using that as like a strong point in separating myself from the rest of the bodybuilders, because you can have all the knowledge, but we actually had to apply it to real people. So most people that you coach aren't those professional athletes, but simply people living their life, but wanting to improve their physical appearance or how they feel mentally. And all of those things, like the little details, get lost when you're coaching a professional. They will do the job regardless, but someone with a regular job and with children, with a family, with less time on their hands and not the ambition to become a professional, their motivation usually is a lot less strong, like the discipline isn't instilled in them because they don't have like a hard set deadline or a goal. So you then have to, give them more tools to basically allow themselves to still, reach their goal that they have in mind, but in different ways that are scientifically based. Like how do you actually change someone's behavior? How do you actually motivate them to become disciplined eventually about their lifestyle, rather than expecting someone to come to you already having that discipline and not having to worry about that part? That actually is the biggest part you have to worry about with, lifestyle clients, basically. So during my education, you get taught a lot about how to, persuade and deal with people like that, how they can best design their lives around, reaching their goals. So really changing the lifestyle instead of just giving them a diet and expecting them to follow it, because 9 out of 10 times it simply won't happen. So knowing that and having experienced that, like for example, for 6 months, I had to work face to face with like the average Joe, basically, or even people who are simply overweight, like the typical overweight person who is unmotivated, who is not intrinsically motivated to change their lifestyle. How do you deal with people like that? So that taught me a lot of life experience, basically, and that gives me tools to also help people who are slightly more motivated. But even those people sometimes have days that are feel more down, or maybe even a little bit depressed when they don't reach their goals. There are a lot of science-based tools you can use to actually help those people as well. So, and on top of that, of course, knowing how to scour the internet for actual legitimate articles, legitimate research, instead of just cherry picking what you want, knowing how to look at a study and knowing, how valid it is, in comparison to what you need from it to help someone. Because there's a lot of on social media, the problem is that you can easily find any study you want to fit into your own view and simply show it on social media, and people will assume it's real and true because it's literature. But you have to actually dig into the literature to know how valid it really is. And that's an experience I've been taught at school. So I'm very thankful for that. And yeah, so it has brought me a lot. And I'm very proud of having a title like that, because it's a protected title. You can't really call yourself dietitian if you haven't done the literal, if you haven't gotten the literal degree dietitian. You can't call yourself that. So like a doctor, it's a protected title. So that means something, and that means you've actually proven to the world and to the scientific world that you're worthy of a title like that. So it does mean something to me.
Mm, excellent, man. Okay, now let's start getting into some bodybuilding talk. So you started lifting weights at the age of 14. When did you first do your first competition? How old were you, Wesley, and how did that first competition go way back in the beginning?
So I was 20 years old when I did my first contest. So after about 6 years of training, but honestly, the 6 years of training, it of course wasn't perfect, but I made quite a lot of progress pretty early on. And only the last year of those 6 years did I do anything about nutrition at all. So that's when I got inspired, because like when I was from age 19 to 20, I made so much progress that it made me realize how important nutrition is. You can train as hard as you want. When nutrition isn't on point, you won't get the results that you can. And the first contest, I did the juniors here in the Netherlands, and I won everything I could win. So I won my own class and the overall as a 20-year-old. So that, of course, instilled a lot of confidence in me, because it was the first contest. I wasn't sure what to expect at all. I even asked my parents for permission, because I had literally no idea what it was, what it would be like. The only competitions I ever knew were like the Mr. Olympia and professional contests that they showed on YouTube back when YouTube was growing a little bit and showing more of the bodybuilding footage. But no amateur athletes was actually showing how it was like on a stage like that. I didn't even know amateur stage existed. So it was really a surprise that a contest like that exists at all. And when I competed and then winning, that really was the start of everything that has happened so far, because when you win once, then of course you're confident enough to try it again. And you don't want to lose then. So you really are doing your best to win the next one as well. So I did quite a lot of contests pretty quickly in succession. And yeah, that was a great time to really make a name for myself in the Netherlands as well.
So now that first competition, was that in classic physique or was that actually in like open men's bodybuilding?
So the first contest was in 2013. So classic physique didn't exist yet. So I was an open bodybuilder up until 2018, because in 2018, that's when the first show ever came to Europe for classic physique. And that's when I did classic physique right away, because I knew, okay, this is perfect for me. But pretty much for 4 years, I only did either junior contests. And after the year, after I turned 23, I had to do the open class as a super heavyweight because of my length, of my height. I already weighed above 100 kilos pretty quickly. So I was already automatically from juniors going to super heavyweights. So that was a big jump, but even that went quite well. So it was a very great time for me, even before classic physique existed.
Who was the first like pro bodybuilder that you ever saw, whether that was on YouTube or on a magazine cover? Do you remember who that was, Wesley?
It was actually Victor Martinez on the Muscle and Fitness magazine at the cover, and I was like, yeah, I was very inspired and surprised at how someone could ever look like that. Because, like, the weirdest things, you look at his abs, you're like, how can someone create abdominal muscles like that? How do they do it? And of course, inside the magazine, they describe the workouts and you try them out, but you realize it doesn't go as quickly as you want. And the funny thing is, I saw him a couple of years later at the FIBO Expo in Germany. He was there and he actually complimented me in turn about my physique just walking around there. And then we had a conversation about training, and I told him, I'm training 6 times a week. He said, that's, you really should train less frequently, because when the moment I started to train less frequent, that's when I made the most gains, because you grow when you rest. And it's stuff like that when you hear for the first time from a professional bodybuilder's mouth that you take really seriously. And I realize now how very true that is. But it takes many years for someone with such passion for training to actually, have the guts to train less and have the trust that it actually provides you with more progress rather than less. But yeah, he was the first one I actually noticed being like looking incredible on a fitness magazine.
Yeah, awesome. Victor was, man, in his prime, he was the elite of the elite. And talk about like an aesthetic physique, like you're drawn to the Arnolds and the Lee Haneys. I mean, Victor, I mean, back in the early to mid 2000s, I mean, he was battling out with Ronnie and Jay, and what a beautiful physique in terms of aesthetics, right, Wesley?
Yeah, for sure. He was very, very amazing. I even back when I saw the first documentaries from Ronnie Coleman, I actually thought, well, Victor Martinez also looks incredible. I thought he was like a Ronnie Coleman type of physique, but a bit more aesthetic, especially like at the 2007 Mr. Olympia, where he looked incredible, of course. So he had a very amazing physique, and his photo shoots looked amazing as well. That's what I, of course, was most surprised by, because they use just perfect lighting and a perfect pump, and seeing how much weight they use, and just incredible physiques, especially from Victor. So he is also one of the bodybuilders from back then that I really look up to in terms of how they look.
Okay, so you won everything during your first competition, and then you said you just kind of continued to compete. Talk about what was it like for you, Wesley, being 20 years old, and then you start competing, you start winning. Obviously you're going to start gaining some attention and notoriety. I mean, was that easy for you? Was that hard for you? Walk us through some of those feelings and emotions when you started getting recognized, when you started getting some attention, because sometimes when we get a lot of attention when we're young, or at any age for that matter, when we're not used to it, it can kind of mess with our minds a little bit, and we can kind of lose ourselves. So talk about what was that like for you at that young age, getting all that recognition?
Well, so I think that really depends on your personality as well, how you feel like naturally. And I've always been a very grounded person. So of course, I take pride in my victories and what I do and what I accomplish, but I always think about the next thing. So I don't dwell on like, oh, I won and now I'm the best. So that's it. No, I just think about, oh, wow, it seems like I have potential to get even further than this because there's always someone or a competition that is more difficult than this one. So, and of course, having the right people around me, like for example, my dad back then, the gym owner also, who was also a bodybuilder back in the day, they all kept me grounded as well. So they didn't praise me too much. And I've never really been in an environment where people that are close to me praise me that much because I think one of the benefits of living in the Netherlands is that people, like the general public, um, doesn't actually really appreciate a bodybuilding physique. So it's not like I'm going in public and everybody is giving me compliments. It's more like they think it's like a weirdly interesting thing that you're doing. And even if you win, they congratulate you, but at the same time, they're like, well, it's that's an interesting sport to do. Like when I got to America for the first time, like just walking around, people come up to you and give you compliments. So I think the culture also is really indicative of how you feel about yourself. I've always just felt, just like a regular person who does his thing, and I happen to have a talent for the sport. And every single time that I go to a contest, I basically reset myself and try to beat myself. So even at a very young age, even though people find that a mature characteristic, a personality trait, you always have to look at yourself and what can you improve about yourself, not look at others because you can't change what they look like anyway. But if you always focus on your own progress, you can't really have a big ego because you want to beat yourself. So if you beat others, you're like, oh, I'm better than you. But if you say I'm better than myself, it's a very different feeling, more of a proud and pride feeling rather than feeling that you're better than another person. So the attention that I got was quite there very early on, even by like getting on the Muscle and Fitness, the Dutch Muscle and Fitness magazine cover. They called me like the Dutch Oak after my second competition already, without ever me mentioning Arnold at all. People they compared me to Arnold themselves, and that actually put a little bit of pressure on me because I realized, okay, Arnold is like an icon of the sport. If you're compared to him, you can screw up because if you then screw up, it goes away immediately. So, but I took it to heart, and even to this day, the poses that I can do that look like Arnold's, I realize that not a lot of people can pull them off. So why not keep pulling those off and improving upon them, and really making it my own, especially. So never copy someone else, but always make something your own because a copy is never as good as the original, of course.
Yep, love it. Now let's fast forward just a little bit because we could talk for 3 hours, but I know you're in prep and I don't want to take that much time, obviously. But so let's speed up. In 2018, Classic Physique, you said, came over to the Netherlands, and that's when you began your Classic Physique journey, so to speak. So when did you turn pro? When did you get your IFBB pro card? And then talk about your pro debut for us, please, Wesley.
Okay, so in 2017, in November, I actually won the super heavyweight class in the Netherlands. So I was at that moment the top bodybuilder in the Netherlands, which of course is an amazing feeling to have. And then in March, the following year in 2018, that's when Classic Physique came to Europe for the first time in London. And of course, me and my coach were like, okay, we got to do this. So we pretty much stayed on diet, small off season in between, but it was only a couple of months. So I already had the mass because I weighed exactly the amount of weight I was allowed to weigh for a Classic Physique. I even had to drop a little bit of weight from the super heavyweight division to the Classic Physique division. So like at least 1.5 kilos, about 3.5 pounds. And I actually won my pro card there immediately. So in classic physique, like the first opportunity I had to do it, I won the class. And that meant a lot to me because it means that I'm not just preaching classic bodybuilding. I actually am a classic bodybuilder because the judges reward me with a pro card. And that's when I won my pro card. And from then things went really quickly because in that year, like a couple of months later, I did my first pro show, the Chicago Pro. So that was from March doing the classic physique competition to July doing the Chicago Pro, only a couple of months in between. And that show I won as well. So I was qualified in my first rookie year for the Olympia too. So that it went so quickly that in hindsight, it went a little too quickly. Everybody always says you have to do the Olympia when you're qualified, and I do agree. But you also have to realize that if you do it right away, you will be met with the best guys in the world. So better be prepared to take a downfall, basically. And that's exactly what happened because I couldn't keep my competition shape up. Because if you look back, I did the contest in November, and all the way until September is the Olympia. So I pretty much had to stay in contest shape all year round for the first time I ever did that. And that's when I lost, my peak a little bit, my peak look at the Olympia. And that's when I ended up a joint 14th place. And of course, it was a disappointment because I've always placed very high. Most of my places were always first place, and then to all of a sudden be like out of sight of the top 10 was an unknown feeling to me, but it was the Olympia. So that motivated me a lot because now I was one of the top contenders in the world all of a sudden instead of an unknown Dutch bodybuilder. So that's really when it started.
Now, talk about, we're going to continue to talk about your competing history here in a minute, but I want to touch on coaching here just quickly. How soon in your competitive history did you hire a coach, and who was the coach that helped you turn pro? And was that the coach that kind of helped you, in your pro debut and in the beginning? And where are you at right now in terms of who is your coach, or do you coach yourself?
So I actually, for my very first show, I already had a coach. He was the one who persuaded me to do a show in the first place. So he saw me in the gym and he said, I'm going to coach you for free if you're going to do this contest, because I simply want to see what you look like on stage. And that was pretty awesome. He was a local coach. So he was good for the time being. So because it was amateur shows and you didn't really have to be peeled and stuff like that. So he was good enough because I always had, of course, a genetically gifted physique to carry the placings basically for a while. But then as the competition became more fierce, I actually had to drop that coach and do a few competitions myself because I wanted to, I learned more and more about nutrition and training. So I had the feeling I could do it myself for a while. And when things got really serious, when I stopped being a junior, so I had to do super heavyweight classes, I actually went to a Belgian coach, pretty known here. His name was Ferdi Robijns. So he's more a guy on the background, but he was one of the coaches who did like Olympia athlete coaching, for example. So he knew how to really change someone's physique at an Olympia or at least a professional level. So that's when I won my pro card with him. I did my first pro show, the first Olympia. But after that, I realized, okay, now we pretty much maxed out what we can do together. Like all the knowledge that he provided me, I soaked up, and then I decided to move on myself. And that's what happened in 2019, winning my first pro show, coaching myself. So I wanted to do it at least once, just to prove to myself I could do it, and qualifying for the Olympia all by myself, doing the Olympia myself, and then after the 2020 Olympia, actually winning Poland to qualify once again, doing it myself. And after that, that's when I have my current coach, Stefan Kienzel, who is a true veteran in the coaching business. At least here in Europe, he's coaching a lot of highly professional athletes like Urs, number 4 in the world in classic physique, Fabian, number 8, and men's physique number 3 in bikini, also an Olympia athlete, and myself and a lot of others. So working with him is truly a blessing because it feels like a team rather than being coached by someone having to do what the person says. We are really talking to each other about the best strategy because we realize that we both know a lot and we both have a lot of experiences, but bringing those together gives us the best possible package on stage. And working with him has been a true blessing for sure.
So a question I want to ask you, Wesley, to kind of help some of the listeners and viewers out, if they're kind of just starting to think about getting into competing, or they just maybe competed in their first or second competition, do you suggest that somebody hires a coach from the get-go, or do you think it's important for people to kind of just try the competition thing out on their own and then hire a coach maybe later on down the road? What say you on that?
Well, I think in terms of making progress in the gym in general, I think you should do that on your own for as long as possible until you realize, okay, I'm hitting a plateau, because hitting plateaus, that's when you shouldn't try weird things like grabbing to PEDs way too quickly, for example. So people that I coach personally, and I'm happy to say that I give off the vibe that people trust me when they hit a plateau like that and I want to take the next step, that they come to me first before trying it themselves. So when you hit like a plateau and you want to go to the next level, it doesn't have to be with PEDs at all, by the way. It can be like with nutrition or training or just a better plan in general. But usually people who have been training for many years, who are really serious about their progress and then want to take the jump, I would really hire a knowledgeable coach for that, to guide them, to really ask them, be able to ask them questions about their experiences, about how to do it most responsibly, and how to achieve your goals in the most efficient manner. So, but especially when doing a contest, maybe I think doing a contest and getting a coach right away, that's a smart thing to do, because some people, like if you take 2 people and one person does the contest without a coach and their shape really isn't good at all, they will not be motivated maybe ever to do a show again because their shape was bad. But in potential, the shape could have been very good if they had a coach. So the other person who had a coach and actually did very well at the show, both had the same potential, but because the one with the coach showed a better package, they are now motivated to keep going in the competitions and maybe get very far, whereas the other person gave up right away. So I think that's very important, that you shouldn't do a contest because it takes a lot of time, effort, money, sacrifice. And if you then do it on your own, knowing you can't show your best package, it would be kind of a waste of a prep, in my opinion, if you're not entirely sure how to prep yourself very objectively and accurately.
All right. So getting back into your competing, so after that first Olympia that you qualified for, you got 14th place. Just talk a little bit about, you said coming out of that, you were very motivated. Walk us through the next few years up to the point where you're, just several weeks out from this year's Olympia. So just talk about from that first Olympia up to where you're at right now, please, Wesley.
Yeah. So the first Olympia, when I look at the pictures, I can really see I'm a rookie. I don't feel comfortable that much on that big of a stage, because it's like a shock when you're in Las Vegas at the Strip for the first time. You're like overwhelmed with everything. So it's like over before you know it, and you're like, oh, I should have actually done better here, but it's been too overwhelming. So I took that all into account and then did the Arnold Classic the following year in 2019. But then I had a much better shape, much better routine, much better presentation, but still ended up at 10th place, which actually brought up a lot of controversy around that placing. And that showed me that the public was behind me, even when judges sometimes put me in a lower place than I expected. I always respect and accept the placing I get, because the judges, they always make logical decisions whenever they can, obviously. But so there must have been a reason why I ended up placing 10 instead of like in the top 5 at the All Classic. However, people in the audience and social media really did love my look. So it was like, okay, people want to see me do good, want to see me do well, but still at a competitive stage, I need to improve myself. So that's when I really look at my physique, made my weaker points much stronger, like the legs, the hamstrings, overall presentation and conditioning even more. So the same year, that's when I did the Romania Pro and won the pro show to qualify myself for the next year's Olympia. So I actually had a full year. And that's when, of course, the COVID pandemic happened. So the Olympia from September went to December. So I had 1 year and 1 month to actually have an off season for the Olympia because I was already qualified, and it took more than a year before the Olympia was held again because of COVID. So the pictures from 2020 Olympia were my biggest ever. However, I slightly missed my peak, and some personal stuff, some private stuff happened around that time, which partially explained why I didn't reach my peak at that moment. On top of that, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks in Aruba before. So I had to leave my family for like 3 weeks. So it was like a big chaos, basically. But that long off season where I altered my training and altered into pretty much be a true professional bodybuilder in the off season, making a lot of progress, really showed me that I still have a lot of progress to make within my weight limit. So that shape I was very proud of, even though I didn't get the conditioning I want. I was placed 11th. And then the following year, I did Portugal Pro, ended up 3rd for that. And then a few weeks later, did Poland Pro, won that show to qualify me for the 2021 Olympia. And that's when I hired my coach, Stefan Kienzel, to prepare me for that Olympia, reaching my best condition ever. But I did see that reaching that conditioning, I actually lost like a lot of fullness and pretty much stage weight compared to what I thought I had. So that made me realize, oh, wait a second, I still have a lot of kilos to go before I fill out my tall frame. And that's what I did this year, showing my new improved shape at the Arnold Classic and also the Yamamoto France Pro, where I was very happy to see the improvements there, and especially the response from the people and the judges telling me that I brought a completely different package, that it was true, your classic shape that they wanted to see. The presentation was much better, and my coach being an incredible help there with actually my presentation, my confidence, and little tweaks here and there that actually changed my entire look on stage. That simply brought everything together, which gives me now the best, highest confidence I've ever had to do the Olympia and truly placing higher than I've ever placed before. So I'm very excited.
Hmm. What's your personal goal, Wesley, for this year's Olympia? Where would you like to place? What would you like to bring to the stage?
Well, definitely top 6. That is yeah, that's my goal. Of course, top 10 is like I always say, okay, top 10 is my goal, top 6 is my dream, because top 10 is more of a realistic goal, knowing that so many athletes are now doing the competition compared to last year. Like maybe half of the athletes competed then that are competing now. So that's a lot of competitors. So placing top 10 now would have been a bigger achievement than placing top 10 last year because of the amount of people. But still, I think I improved so much that I honestly, objectively can see me in the first call out if I reach the ultimate combination of my fullness, my shape, and the conditioning, which I really am confident I can, given that I'm already looking like this 5 weeks out from the Olympia. I'm very certain that we're going to show a shape that we've never shown before. I feel very good, very confident. The presentation will be better. I know exactly what to do on stage. I feel it's my 4th Olympia, so it's not new anymore. I've been to Las Vegas before, so it's everything. It's going to feel like a regular show, simply with more people in it, and it's going to be amazing.
Hmm. So when your time comes to step off the competitive stage for the last time, whenever that might be, do you have like an ultimate vision or an ultimate goal for yourself in terms of the physique you would like to obtain? And what's that ultimate goal competitively as an athlete that you would like to achieve before your time's up as a competitive bodybuilder?
Yeah, so the ultimate goal is, of course, to win the Classic Physique Olympia. That is the ultimate goal that I have, which I think it's not impossible, that's for sure, because even the winner right now isn't perfect. So there's always a chance you can win as long as you believe in yourself. And I've come this far by believing in myself, and I'm still able to improve. So I know what the potential is. And when I look at my showing, like at the last two shows, I can really see that if I make improvements here and there still year after year, that battling it out with a champion and really getting, for example, a three-man call out with me being one of them and actually being a competition for the best in the world is a possibility. And when I reach that, then I'm going to be happy with what I've achieved, because I've challenged and really made the champ think he could have been beaten by me. And that's something I want to achieve, because then I know I did everything in my power to be the best I can be. And that's, eventually, ultimately, all you can do. And I simply want to be proud looking at the pictures of my presentation, of how I look, of knowing that I did everything in my power. And later, when my both of my children are older, my son is now almost 2.5, for example. He's starting to recognize bodybuilding more and more like what it really is. But I, of course, want them to be proud of me as well. So I want to show them that no matter how hard it may seem, that if you don't give up, if you keep going, you can really get so much further than other people might think. And that's a lesson that I really want to instill in them as well. It doesn't have to do anything with bodybuilding at all, but it's just a general life lesson that you start very small, very humble, but eventually you get to the top of the world, basically, by simply keep going and never giving
Mm.
up. So yeah, very excited.
Mm. So talk to me a little bit, Wesley, about passion. That's something that you kind of touched on really lightly earlier, but how important is it for us as human beings in life, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's, fixing cars or, gaming, whatever it might be? How important do you think it is for us as human beings to find what we're passionate about and really pursue that passion, whether that's a career or maybe it's a side passion project? Like, not all of us are going to be able to make an income from our passion necessarily, but pursuing our passion and finding it, how important is that to you and for all of us human beings from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a good point you make, because it's not about making an income from your passion, because if you think like that at the beginning, it's never going to work, because I am able to make a living out of my passion because I did it because it was my passion. And eventually it can grow out to be something like that, but it's not an assurance at all. But in most cases, it can really happen, because when you're getting better and better at something, when it's your passion, you automatically become better. You automatically do your research about it, and you find a way to monetize it anyway, because there are so many different people on this planet. There's always some groups that are interested in what you're doing specifically, and you're able to monetize it by giving them a service or a product that they specifically want, that only you are the best at, for example. But I think it's very important, because if I look back at my own life, back when I didn't really know that bodybuilding was going to be my passion, because I was like in puberty, I was not a harsh person, but I was kind of like down a little bit around my parents and around other people sometimes, because in the back of my mind, I never had a future goal or ambition I could work towards. And when you don't have that, you start to, yeah, you can become a little bit depressed or thinking, okay, what am I really doing here? So even if you have like a regular job that you're not really satisfied with, indeed doing like a side thing, like something you're passionate about to the side, and being able to focus on that, because it's what's giving you energy. So when you wake up, in the morning, if you notice that you keep laying in bed because you're not passionate about what you're going to do, that's something you got to fix, because it's such an enormous difference when you wake up and you want to wake up because you want to work on what you're passionate about. That gives your energy, that fulfills your life. It brings your life meaning. And yeah, the most important thing is, even when you're tired, when you work on your passion, it provides you with new refound energy. So that's really pretty much a key to wanting to keep living your life in the way you're doing now, instead of like living life, letting life live you. So you want to take most out of your life by really doing what you like. And I think, even though it's a very big cliche, you really should try to pursue your passion, and that will make you happy.
Great, great. Okay, we're going to start finishing up, but I do want to touch on just a couple more quick things here, Wesley. You said that you adjusted or changed your training, I think, back in 2020. How did you adjust or change your training back then? And how has your training kind of evolved up to this point?
Yeah, so the first true change was in 2019, when I had that very long off season. Yeah, in 2019 to 2020, that's really what the biggest change was. And I got my inspiration from Jordan Peters, like a very huge UK bodybuilder who inspired a lot of people by simply training as heavy as you possibly can, but with correct form and execution, and logging those lifts. So actually knowing, okay, I'm doing the seated row. How much did I do last time? How many reps with how much weight, how many sets? And that's when I actually reduced the sets, but maximized the intensity, and only did movements that I felt connected with. And I logged all of those lifts. So I've been logging now for almost, 3 years, pretty much 3 years. And it gives you so much more clarity in what you need to do in the training, because now it's an objective thing. It's not subjective anymore. I used to step into the gym, and the moment I stepped into the gym, that's only when I started to decide, okay, what am I going to do for back today? What am I going to do for chest today? Depending on what I felt like. So that's a way of training I recommend for people who simply do training for fun, because if you log all of your lifts, it can become a little bit less intuitive, less fun for some people. But for me, progress is the fun part. So I want to progress on my lifts, and that will progress my body and my musculature as well. And I became a lot stronger on a lot of those movements that really felt well connected to me. And my back, for example, my legs, they grew so much within that 1 year, that I realized, okay, this is the way to go forward now. It reduces injury risk, reduces fatigue, and it stimulates the muscle with much more efficacy compared to just doing something in the gym that you think feels right, but maybe you did more the last time, but you never wrote it down. So how do you know? So I think that is the biggest transformation that my training has gone through. And little things have been adding up, like finding movements that feel the very best, and then only focusing on those movements, leaving movements completely out that feel like less efficient in the movement. Like just leave them out, like different lat pull down attachments. I love to do the regular lat pull down, but it simply didn't agree with my anatomy completely. So I've replaced that with like a shoulder width handle pull down that gives you more freedom of motion, allowing me to once again do a lat pull down, but now with a chest support, with a different handle. Feels very different in the contraction. So now my back is being spoken to a lot more by that exercise, and then I can improve upon that movement again. So I keep evolving my training to make it the most efficient and effective, basically, for my muscles, and reducing the most amount of fatigue possible for the most amount of stimulus, which nowadays I think is starting to become more and more popular.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, one of the last things I want to touch on, Wesley, with you is your clothing line. That seems to be something that's brings you in a great income, and it's something that you're also passionate about. So talk about your clothing line. When did you start it, and what's kind of what's the purpose behind it?
Yeah, so I started my YouTube in like 2016 when it really started to grow. And I followed some people who also had a YouTube channel, and they showed their clothing that they have designed themselves on the channel. And I thought by myself, whoa, that's the easiest possible thing you can do to promote your clothing, is by literally just wearing it in the video and saying, hey, by the way, I have this website. If you like this piece of clothing, you can check it out. And we've always been like, the brand is Vintage Genetics. It really stands for old school bodybuilding, gym wear, and apparel. So it's nowadays we sell a lot of the oversized gym clothing, and I'm proud to say that we were one of the first with the true, like the old school cut oversized clothing, like the scoop necks with the short, cropped, oversized t-shirts that you used to see in the 90s, for example, or even Lee Haney wearing, like with a very tiny stringer beneath, like the true oversized cut terry cloth t-shirts. I custom made those because I simply love that old school look, and we've always had like different old school designs, like the stringers, the tank tops, the Bermuda shorts, like all of those things you can find at the website. But it was amazing, that's truly amazing, that I started a YouTube channel to give people advice about training mostly, and now about nutrition and everything regarding bodybuilding. But that people have supported me so much by purchasing the clothing, that allowed me to actually make all the trips to America, to all the pro shows, to basically have those purchased by people fund what I can show on the channel, and fund basically the shows that I'm doing, because it's a very big investment, of course, to just go to America and like take the family and rent a car, apartment, the flight, the food. It's a very big expense. But because people support me through the Vintage Genetics website and getting the clothing, they getting something out of it with the clothing, and I'm getting something out of it by being able to live like a bodybuilder and live, like, get the most out of this lifestyle. So it's really been a blessing, and yeah, it's just amazing to feel that incredible support by people purchasing the clothing and showing the clothing on Instagram stories. And yeah, it's just, whenever I'm in another country, in another gym, and I see people wearing my clothing, that's just a unique feeling of appreciation that I do have for the extent that the brand has gone to. So yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
Awesome. All right. So kind of the last thing I want to wrap up with here, Wesley, is you've been on the Olympia stage numerous times, and you will continue to be on the Olympia stage. And one day, God willing, you may be classic physique Mr. Olympia. What I kind of want to close with is, again, somebody that's watching this, somebody that's listening to this, maybe they're from a small town, they're from maybe where a lot of people don't leave, kind of like you were, right? I'm from a town of less than 5,000 people. A lot of people graduate high school, they leave, most of them come back, a lot of people never leave, kind of like what you were talking about with your hometown. But somebody's watching this, somebody's listening to this, what can you share with those people that maybe they feel like they don't have what it takes, or maybe they're from a small town, they don't have the best gym, they don't have the best equipment? What can you share with those people to kind of maybe encourage them and build them up? Like, hey, if you have a passion, if you have a dream, you can chase it, you can pursue it, and eventually you can achieve it.
Yeah, there's nothing in life that makes you happier than simply progressing towards your goal. So everybody starts somewhere. Some people start higher up than others, but everybody is able to get to a better place compared to where they are now. Especially when it's your passion, it shouldn't really feel like work anyway. So you might not have the access to the best tools or equipment or services, but you do have access to something, and you're gonna leverage the hell out of it and make the most out of it, like I did with a simple gym, simple environment, no knowledge around me regarding bodybuilding. But as long as you keep doing it, you will progress for sure. And once you get to a certain point in progression, you will be able to use that as a foundation to grow upon even more. So a short example is that I won my pro card training in a gym with 0 machines. So only barbells and dumbbells. So you can't go more basic than that. So that's, the possibilities are there for sure. I'm very proud of stuff like that, because I'm like, I won the Classic Physique show training the way they used to train back in the 70s. So exactly old school training. So just look at people like way before you. They also didn't have the tools, yet some of those people are the most famous bodybuilders or other professionals ever, and they didn't even have any of the tools available today. So even though you think you may have little available to you, it's still a whole lot more than a lot of people had even 10 years ago, for example. So make the most out of it and trust the process and enjoy the process. So the destination will always be there, but you have to enjoy the way to the destination, because that's going to be the longest time. So even, it's even best if the destination remains in the future, because if you enjoy the process, you're going to have a very fulfilled life. And along the way, you will experience things you will have never thought of that you could experience. You will be proud of things you never even thought about before. So just trust the process and you will find fulfillment in your life for sure. And it's just going to be an amazing experience.
Way to end it, Wesley. Before I do a really quick outro and I let you go, Wesley, why don't you give us your Instagram, give us a website, any shout outs, any other sponsors that you want to share with us, any, links, codes, whatever you have for us to kind of close us out. I'm going to turn it over to you and then I'll do a quick outro and that'll be a wrap. So platform's yours, Wesley.
All right, so I have my YouTube channel, Wesley Vissers, and also Instagram, Wesley Vissers, where I share my journey to the Mr. Olympia, where I show all of my nutrition, my training, supplementation, day in the life, full day of eating, stuff like that. And pretty much, if you're interested in the journey of a professional classic physique athlete who's very passionate about the sport and you want to learn something, definitely check it out. And in the description of every single one of my videos, there's also a link to a mailing list. So if you want to be part of receiving informative emails regarding exactly what I just mentioned, like training, mindset, nutrition, supplementation, written by myself. So it's not spam, it's really written from my point of view as a professional athlete. If you want to know more about that, be sure to be part of the email list as well. We also have the website vintagegenetics.com, where we sell all of our old school clothing, my custom workout and nutrition plans, and I also tend to do coaching as well next year. Again, right now I'm focusing on the Olympia, but next year, beginning of next year, coaching will start up once again as well. Also, a big shout out to my sponsor, Vayu Red, and my coach, Stefan Kinzel, of course. And you can use code Wesley on esn.com for a discount on all of the supplements on that website. It's an incredible brand, which I 100% trust, using up until the day of the show of every single contest I've been doing. So when a bodybuilder does that, it's a big risk, of course. So you really have to trust the brand. So that's always something I like to say. Like if I use it on the day of the show itself, it's got to be good, because you don't want to risk your shape or your look at all. So the quality is definitely there. Yeah, I just really want to thank everybody who supports me, who follows me, who gives me positive reinforcement and comments. And don't forget to stay golden.
There we go. Awesome, Wesley. I really appreciate your time. Okay. And thanks for sharing your life story and your bodybuilding story with all of us. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Yep. You're very welcome. All of you who are tuning in to this episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. I appreciate all of you. I value all of you. And as I continue to say, and as I will continue to say, if it weren't for all of you, the podcast simply would not exist. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. Couple of quick things here as we wrap up this great conversation today with Wesley. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's really important because I release all of these episodes of Behind the Muscle podcast on YouTube first, and then I'll distribute them to iTunes, CastBox, Podbean, and some of the other major podcast platforms. So if you want to stay current on all the Behind the Muscle podcast episodes, make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube. And then also please take this episode with Wesley, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Wesley, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know that you listen specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.